We are continuing our study and talk about the Psalms. And tonight we're going to talk about the laments. And this is, well, I just going to jump in. When you deal with the lament Psalms, the two questions that get asked over and over and over again throughout the book of Psalms is the same questions you and I ask. Why? How long? And those are the two big questions anytime you start having problems, anytime there is a major event in your life. Did I grab the wrong one of these, Jeff? There it goes. Join me for a short prayer. Father, as we read from your word tonight, we pray that you would give us courage and strength to deal with the hard times of life. Give us wisdom that we can discern, that we can help one another. Father, we realize that you are God, that you are always there, that you have invited us to cast all of our cares upon you, because indeed you not only care for us, but you have promised to answer. Father, we pray that you would give us faith, that we can trust you when we don't understand. We will continue to serve you with the great hope that we have through Jesus. Father, be merciful to us now. In Jesus' name, amen. The categories of the Psalms we've talked about before, so I'm just going to blow through this. They're all, I gave you those handouts because it's all in the handouts on there. A lot of the Psalms are Psalms of praise, Psalms of thanksgiving. We've studied some of the wisdom songs, which are simply the teaching of that. Some of them are royal Psalms. They are about the king and his position. And some of the royal songs are also messianic. They talk about the coming king, King Jesus, on that. They're not always the same. Some of them are just pertaining to David or the Davidic king, and some to Jesus. It continues. There are some that are called the penitential Psalms. When David sinned with Bathsheba, he wrote 4 or 5 different Psalms about how sorry he was and how it tore him up spiritually on that. The others are imprecatory Psalms. A big fancy word. They prayed that bad things would happen to these people that were causing bad things to happen to other people. And those were not personal vengeance. They were for God to provide justice to the evildoers. And then the last ones, and we're going to cover those in interesting, they were called Songs of Ascent, the last of the Psalms. We think that they sang them as they would journey up to Jerusalem for the Passover feast, and later on in the year for the Day of Atonement feast. And they also sang some of these, and we think Jesus and the apostles sang some of these the last night when he started the Lord's Supper and gave that to them at that Passover feast. There was a set order that had developed, and they used these last Psalms. So we'll talk about those. And then there's a lot of them that are just trust Psalms. They are Psalms that declare their confidence in God's protection and the fact that God is there and is faithful to his covenant and his promise. Now, in your notes, I've just given you a bunch of the different numbers of the Psalms. I want you to know those are not my numbers. Those are what other Bible scholars in writing the commentaries have suggested. And I'm going to tell you, I'm not sure at all about them. Some of them that they put in one category, I went, I don't think it fits there. I would put it over here. So don't worry about them. They're just a way of trying to organize in your own mind how this works. For example, one of the trust Psalms, Lord, I take refuge. How can I say to my soul, flee as a bird to the mountain? For behold, the wicked bend the bow. They make ready their arrow upon the string to shoot in the darkness at the upright in heart. But if the foundations are destroyed, what are the righteous going to do? The Lord is in his holy temple. Do you see that transition just immediately? What are we going to do? The Lord reigns. God is in his temple. The Lord's throne is in heaven. His eyes behold, and his eyelids test the sons of men. The Lord tests the righteous and the wicked. And the one who loves violence, God's soul hates. Upon the wicked, God will rain snares. Fire and brimstone and burning wind will be the portion of their cup. For the Lord is righteous. He loves righteousness. The upright will behold his face. You don't notice that there's really anything necessarily going wrong in this guy's life, but rather it's just a confidence that God's righteousness will reign. I've used this concept when people want to talk about, well, what do you do with the person over in the middle of the deepest, dark part of Africa that never heard the gospel? And I just take them to Psalms like this and say, God will be fair. God will do what's right. And God knows their heart and their opportunity, and God will do what is right on that. But then there are times in life when your life falls apart and you don't really know what to do about that. And so the psalmist began these psalms, and these are laments. And we almost never pray these things. In fact, we're uncomfortable reading some of these. I read almost all of them today. I sat there and had a second cup of coffee in the morning and just read all of these Psalms. And it's fascinating on that. But, even in our conversations, we don't really do that. How many times, how are you doing? Fine. And you find out later that they're dying of something, and they're not fine at all, but we just do that. Now, the person that you could get a right answer to is one of your closest friends. And the person that you will tell how you're really doing is one of your closest friends. That is, except I discovered in Tucson that a lot of the old people, you didn't ever ask them how they were doing because they gave you an organ recital. They mentioned every organ that was not functioning and what went on with that. But most of the time, only our closest friends. So our ability to talk with God about what's really bothering us is really kind of an indicator of how good our relationship with God is and how much we really do trust him. In the midst of the worst in times, what do you think? What do you pray? How do you get through the time with your own thoughts and how you do that? Are we really, as Peter told us to do, able to cast our cares upon God? And not just in generic and not just the nice things, but can we really, when we don't understand, when we begin questioning, can we really sit down and pray and talk to God about those things? Those are the hardest prayers that Christians have to answer for them. And part of the problem is the scriptures tell us over and over again that we live in a broken world. And that started because of sin that entered the world, and with sin entered death and problems, and they got cast out of the garden, and now we get all kinds. Just the world is a mess. Ecclesiastes, he said, it's better off for both of them as the one who has never existed, who has never seen the evil activity that is done under the sun. I have seen every labor and every skill which is done, the result of rivalry between a man and his neighbor. This too is vanity and a striving after wind. He had tried to figure out what life was all about. He got the right answer, by the way, at the end of that: fear God and keep his commandments. But man, trying to figure that out. And then in Romans chapter 8, Paul said, I consider the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory that is to be revealed to us. For the anxious longing of the creation awaits eagerly for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him, that is God, who subjected it in hope, that the creation itself will be set free from its slavery to corruption under the freedom of the glory of the children of God. I don't know if you've ever had to get weeds out of your garden, but you can thank Adam and Eve for that. And that was the beginning of this whole broken world. Things that you have to now earn your keep if you're a farmer by the sweat of your brow. He went on to say, for we know the whole creation groans and suffers the pains of childbirth together until now. And not only this, but we ourselves, having the first fruits of the Spirit, we groan within ourselves, waiting eagerly for the adoption of sons and the redemption of the body. That comes at the second coming with the raising of the dead and the changing of us that are still alive. In the book of Lamentations, did you all see the word lament in Lamentations? And it's a lament. And it was written by Jeremiah after God allowed the Babylonians to completely destroy Jerusalem and the people of God and take them off into captivity. Picture, if you will, you grew up in Jerusalem. It was the temple. It was the center of God's religion. And now it's a burning pile of rubble. The temple is gone, the palace is gone, the city is gone, the people are gone, and it's just smoldering from the fires that they had set there. And Jeremiah said, how the Lord has covered the daughter of Zion with a cloud in his anger. He has cast from heaven to earth the glory of Israel and has not remembered his footstool in the day of his anger. The Lord swallowed up, he has not spared all of the inhabitations of Jacob. In his wrath he has thrown down the strongholds of the daughters of Judah. He has brought them down to the ground. He has profaned the kingdom and its princes. In his anger he has cut off the strength of Israel. He's drawn back his right hand from before the enemy. He has burned in Jacob like a flaming fire, consuming round about. He has bent his bow like an enemy. He has set his right hand like an adversary, enemy and adversary of Judah, Jerusalem, and the slain, all that were pleasant to the eye. In the tent of the daughter of Zion, he has poured out his wrath like a fire. The Lord has become the enemy. He has swallowed up Israel. He has swallowed up its palaces. He has destroyed its stronghold and multiplied in the daughter of Judah mourning and moaning. So, if you're Jeremiah, how would you pray? How would you take one look at this and the city is gone, the people are gone, your family is gone, everything is just gone. And it's because God brought his wrath against their disobedience on that. And so he said, this I recall to mind. Therefore I have hope. The Lord's steadfast love, the loving kindness, indeed never ceases, for his compassions never fail. They're new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The Lord, he's my portion, says my soul. Therefore, I have hope in him. The Lord is good to those who wait for him, to the person who seeks him. It's good that he waits silently. Now, I'm going to come back to this concept because here's this contrast. Here is the lament. Woe is us. Look what we have to deal with. And right in the middle of that, great is God's faithfulness. I trust him. He's going to make good to happen to good people. And how do you reconcile? How do you keep the balance here? And we struggle with it. Everybody struggles with it. Those that don't struggle with it, they just haven't had something bad happen in their life that will cause it. But it will do that. The lament. Now, Mitt asked me if this was the homework that I was passing out. And I really don't do that. Just read the Psalms, so that's the homework. But I want you to think about it for a minute. Do you remember 9/11? Do you realize we have a whole generation of young people that when you say 9/11, they say, why would I call 911? And they don't recognize the importance and what went on that because it happened long before they were born. Those that are 20 years old now were born 5 years after the event took place. And you're going, really? Wow. And then I think, yeah, and you're 77 years old. So we've seen a whole bunch of different things on that. Or if you were in World War II living in London, and the Germans started bombing London and destroyed house after house and neighborhood after neighborhood, and every night the sirens would go off and the bombs would explode, and you would run as fast as you could to get down into the shelter, and then you'd realize your spouse isn't there or your child is not there or what, because they didn't make it. And this is going to go on for a year. Every night for a year you go. What would you pray? How would you talk to God? Would you not say, how long is this going to go on? Would you not ask if it was your child? Why? Why? And that's the way these are. So I want you to think about that. We're going to come back to that. So I did something rather interesting. Luke led Abide in Me the other morning as we were doing this. And I noticed that RJ, in his editing of this book, put 3 verses there. And Luke did the right thing. We sang all 3 verses of that. But I went and looked it up, and the original actually had 8 verses that were going to be there. Now, there's the second piece of paper that I handed out to you, and it was the Abide with Me. The guy that wrote the words to this was a preacher back in the mid-1800s, and he was one of the lower end preachers in the Ecclesiastes of the church that they had. So he got stuck down by the docks and the workers there unloading the boats, hard crew, a lot of sickness, a lot of injury, and that was his quote unquote parish, as they talked about. So he tried and he dealt with those types of people over and over again. But he developed tuberculosis. Same thing that Doc Holliday had. And it's terrible. And he was sick, he was injured, and what do you do? And so it came time that he finally was told by the doctor, you got to get out of here. You need to go somewhere where it's warm. Well, like Arizona. But he picked a place in France to go to. And he got on a boat and he made it over to France, but he didn't make it to his place because he was just too weak to go. And he died without going there. But before he went, the last night he put together a sermon. And he got up and he preached the sermon. I don't know how true this is. They said that he was so weak he crawled up into the podium and hung onto the podium and delivered his sermon. And then the family tried to carry him back to his home, and he insisted on walking. But he was walking, and it was evening tide. The sun was going down, and he knew he was not going to live very long on this. And he walked back to his room and sat down, and he wrote the words to this song. So you and I sing them as poetical words, eventide, and they weren't poetic to this man. He was dying of this, and he was not going to live very long. So, you know what? I don't think I did that. Okay. One of these days, I have more than enough material, so I'm going to do that. What I was going to do is I was going to have you sing all 8 verses of that song, because it was a lament in the song. And we don't have very many songs in our songbook that way. We probably need more so that we can teach people that, yes, Christians also have problems, but this is how we deal with them. We deal with them with our relationship to God. And that we learn from the Psalms and these Psalms. When you start talking about laments, it's absolutely interesting to me that every book that I picked up to read as I've been studying these mentions this, that the laments, that type of psalm, is the most often type in all of the book of Psalms. Just like 50%, 60% of the Psalms are laments because they were talking. And again, we don't pray this way, and we really don't feel comfortable talking about them this way. But for example, there were a list of individual laments, and these were just personal problems that a man had and how he would talk to God. Then some of them were what we call corporate. They were designed to be sung by the community, by either in the temple or later the synagogues on that. And there's a whole bunch of these. Again, I want to warn you, I didn't do the numbers, and I don't always agree with all of the numbers. That's just to show you that this is how it gets classified in commentaries and that. 38 times in the Psalms, they say, how long? Do you remember in the book of Revelation, chapter 6, the souls that were martyred that were underneath the altar? Do you remember what they cried? How long? How long till you avenge our death? Now, as he would do that, that was a very common thing. How many of you have ever asked that question? How many of you felt really comfortable of pleading with God? How long can... we need to learn how to do that better than we do. The other one is the why question, and that got asked 28 different times. For example, the how long, Psalm 13. How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long shall I take counsel in my soul, having sorrow in my heart all the day? How long will my enemy exalt me? Man, right in one psalm. How long, how long, how long, how many of you think he was tired of this? He wanted to change. And we're going to see that. Then you have the why questions. One that always stands out is Psalm 22. And I want to cover this later because I don't believe that God forsook Jesus. And I'll explain why I don't believe that. But the opening of that psalm was, my God, why? Now, as you read through the psalm, by the time you get to the bottom, you're going to see he didn't. It looked that way to the people. It may have felt that way, but God did not forsake. But the why is still there. Psalm 43, you are God of my strength. Why have you rejected me? Why do I go mourning because of the oppression of the enemy? Psalm 74, oh God, why have you rejected us forever? Why does your anger smoke against the sheep of your pasture? And these were calamitous times. Their nation was going through it, or the individual was going through it, or David was being persecuted by Saul or by the other. And they had a really, really rough time. And so they were comfortable with this. I'm trying to get comfortable with it. But, one of the things, in order to get comfortable with it, you need to have some bad things happen to you. How many of you are praying that bad things can happen to you so you'll learn how to pray laments? And the answer is no, I pray that it doesn't happen to me. And that's just typical. But we've not. And one of the things I hope you are painfully aware of, most of our problems are what we call first world problems. I can't get real butter. I have to have that. I can't believe it's not butter on my toast. Really? And we have all of these things. Those are first world problems because in Somalia, you can't get food. In many parts of the world, the grocery stores are empty. There is nothing for them to eat. And we have to decide, am I going to Walmart or H-E-B? And we have to pick. But those are first world problems. So we've not learned to lament because we haven't had a lot of lamentation. Now, during the Civil War, there was. During our slavery period, those that were slaves had a lot to lament about. But by and large, we've had it easy. And so we've not learned how to do that. One of the things that we're uncomfortable with laments is, it seems to us that that's a lack of faith. If you just believed more, you wouldn't be whining to God about your situation. And honestly, brethren think that way. The religious world in America thinks that way, but that's not the case at all. Those people in the Psalms, they didn't lack faith in God. They just didn't understand what was going on. How many of you have had things happen in life that you didn't understand? I'm going to tell you, it happens every single day. Our world is an amazing universe, and things happen and we don't know. Why did the sun come up today? We don't think about the good things as why, but why? Why did we have this nice building that we can sit in comfortably and not be oppressed? Why? And that. But the truth is, we don't know. I don't like personal things, but my mom and dad had a surprise baby when I was a freshman in high school. So here's this little darling baby girl, and at about 6 months old, she was having problems, and they diagnosed that she had uterine cancer, and there wasn't anything the doctors could do about it. They tried everything they could do. She lived for another 2 years and then died. Why? Wow. What did she ever do? What did my parents ever do to deserve that? And the answer is, we don't know. Was there a purpose? Was it just circumstance? Was it providence? Was God trying to prepare for something else? And I look back and I can see some things. Her dying caused my mom and dad to become very religious. And through that, converted them, and my dad started preaching and preached out the rest of his life, and my mom was a good Bible student, and they had faith. But they didn't have that when I was growing up. But her death did cause that. Was that the reason? I struggle with that. I don't want to say that God did that to this little 3-year-old, but we don't know. And so one of my favorite verses, Deuteronomy 29:29, the secret things belong unto God. And the things that are revealed belong unto us and to our children to do that which is revealed. But the secret things, and I'm going to tell you, life is full of secret things that we have not even thought about. We are learning more about our universe every single day, and it's just absolutely amazing what we have learned. Can you imagine if your great-great-grandparents all of a sudden were allowed to come back into our world? What would it be like for them? Cars, airplanes, television, phones, projectors, air conditioning, light bulbs. I mean, our whole world. And so the secret things belong unto God, and we need to trust God on that. I like the statement of the young, the father, when he asked if Jesus could do something, and Jesus said, all things are possible with God, and his response was, I believe, but help my unbelief. And that ought to be a constant prayer. And so this praying about these things is not a sign of lack of faith or lack of trust. It's just we don't know, and we want to know. I was asking an older preacher one time about a problem that I was trying to deal with, and I asked him to explain it to me, and he first of all said, now, even if I can't explain it to you, it doesn't mean it's not true. I went, wow. And he said, and even if I explain it to you and you don't believe my explanation, it still doesn't mean it's not true. And I had to really wrap my head around those things, because there's a lot of things that people have explained to me. I don't know whether that's true or not. I don't know how that really works. So we need to just learn, I don't know everything. And I can live with that. I can live with how we're doing that. Lord, just help my unbelief. Help me not to stumble because this takes place. Now, one of the things that I've learned in looking at these laments is that within the whining that goes on, it's not whining, but to use that because it sounds that way sometimes, it's not lack of faith. In every one of these laments, you're going to see three things, but you'll have to look for them. The first one is, there's God. Why would you pray a lament to God if you don't believe there is a God? I always laugh at atheists. It's not funny, but, they're railing about God. Why did God do that? Wait a minute, you don't believe in God. So you can't blame God for that if there is no real God. So you explain why that took place now without there being a God. And they have no answer for it on that. I can't always answer why God allowed that or why God did that on that. But I know that these Psalms, undergirding all of that is their faith there is a God. Good. But He's not just God that is a deistic God that created everything and gave us reason and then went off and sat on a cloud and doesn't care what we do. This is a God that interacts with us. This is a God that listens to our prayers. I got thinking about this week. Get your ideas on this. When did God learn English? Here I am. I know a little bit of German. I know how to say thank you and where's the bathroom in Chinese. But I don't know these other languages. But there's people that are praying in all these different languages. One of my proteges that I've working with, he said, did you realize that in your PowerPoint you can click on this little thing up here and it will translate your PowerPoint for you? I said, really? Man, I wish I'd have known that when I was teaching the Chinese classes with PowerPoint. But how good they are, I don't know. So I went up and looked, and there is a list. I don't know how many languages there are in the list. Do you realize God understands every single one of those languages? Not only does God understand the language, He understands the language of my heart. He knows how I'm feeling and what I'm thinking and what... wow. There is a God, and God interacts with His people. One of the Psalms keeps saying this, God is a God that hears our prayers. And we trust that, and we believe that. Even when bad things happen, God listens, and He cares for us. And there's an absolute confidence in these laments that God will act and be faithful to what He has promised on that. Now, if these things aren't true, these 3 points, there's no purpose in a lament. It's just whining. But it's whining to nobody. It's just, and you're going, wait a minute, that's not what these are. And they are about the relationship with God. And so all of the laments are really about relationship. God's relationship with you and your relationship with God and our relationship to the world and our relationship to each other. And that's where the laments come in. Most of these laments have affirmations of all 3 of those points that we just talked about. And they're scattered throughout the psalm. They don't always organize. Some of the laments, have you ever had something really agitating on your mind and you tried to think clearly about it and the thoughts just kind of come hither and they're not organized at all? I've listened to some sermons that are kind of that way. A friend of mine said, yeah, it was kind of like a shotgun shell going off without the shotgun. Just 1,000 points and none of them related to anything. But that's the way sometimes we think when we're agitated. So when your world falls apart and you begin praying to God one of these laments, that's what you can expect. It's not going to be an organized ABC thinking. So we're going to see this. And they also come with a lot of expectation and a lot of hope on that God was at the bottom of the foundation of all of these laments. So what I need to learn to do is, rather than thinking that this is a lack of faith, I need to learn to trust God to trust God that I can talk with Him about what I don't understand. When I don't understand why, when I don't understand how long, can I really talk to God? Do I feel comfortable with that? And if we don't feel comfortable about it, then go back to the Father's prayer, help my unbelief on that. And it's not a sign of weakness. It's really a sign of our growth as God's children and our trust in God on that. Now, years ago, there was a man by the name of Stephen J. Covey, and he wrote a book about how to organize your life. And he made this little 4 different sections of your life. And somebody followed that concept and put together how we respond to these problems of life. What do you do when your life falls apart? How do you respond to those situations? And he said, well, there are some people that are just Pollyanna. Y'all know what that phrase means. Everything is well and good, even when it's not. And so they don't have a lament because they don't ever see anything bad. And when the bad happens, it means it's a sign something good is, okay. That's one way to handle that, but that's not realistic. The other side is the person that just breaks down into the lament. I call this one whimpering. They break down into laments, but they don't have any hope. They just want to gripe about it. That's what whining is all about, just complaining on that. But they don't have any real basis for hope. Why do you think it's going to get better? Why do you think it'll all work out? Why do we think there was a purpose behind any of this? And the answer is because we have hope. We have hope and confidence that God is God and the sovereign. Now, the worst ones are those that don't have any hope and no lament. That's kind of why Judas went out and hung himself. Nothing to look forward to, nothing to build on, just no hope and nothing to complain about because nobody there to listen to me. Wow. Have you ever thought, there was Robert Ingersoll, one of the famous atheists back in the days of Lincoln, I believe it was in that time period. Anyway, he was one of the major atheists of that period of time. And he debated and wrote and argued that there is no God. There's just what we have today. And when you die like your dog. You're just dead all over, just like Rover. There's nothing there. And then his brother died. And the family said, you're very articulate. Would you speak at the funeral? And I have a copy of his funeral sermon. You talk about sad. I can't read it because we stand between 2 hills and we can't see either side of it and we're just here and it's getting dark. And it goes downhill from there because he had no hope. When you're dead, that's the end of it. Everything ends. Man. And then there's us. There's the laments of the Bible. And these are the laments. They have hope, but they also have why? How long? But they're asking why because they believe God knows. And they're asking how long because they believe God can do something about it. And so it's lament, but it's just undergirded with this confidence in God. I think our lack of being able to do this is more of a sign of weakness of our faith than doing the laments is a sign of weakness of faith. I think we got that one completely backwards. And we have to trust God enough that we can talk with God about this. Now, a couple examples. I'm just going to read through these. Psalm 54. Save me, O God, by your name and vindicate me by your power. Hear my prayer, O God. I like that, oh God. Can you hear the empathy oh God, give ear to the words of my mouth, for strangers have risen up against me, and violent men have sought my life. They have not set God before them. Behold, transition, God is my helper. The Lord is the sustainer of my soul. He will recompense the evil to my foes, destroy them in their faithfulness. Willingly, I will sacrifice to you. I will give thanks to your name, O Lord. It is good. He has delivered me from all trouble, and my eye looked upon with satisfaction upon my enemies. Or Psalm 42. As the deer pants for the water. Y'all know that song? It comes from this. It was a lament. As the deer pants for the water, so my soul pants for you, O God. My soul thirsts for God, for the living God. When shall I come and appear before God? My tears, they've been my food day and night, while they say to me all day long, where is your God? And these things I remember, and I pour out my soul within me, for I used to go along with the throng and lead them in procession to the house of God, with a voice of joy and thanksgiving and a multitude of keeping festival. Underline, I used to. Something's happened, and he's not able to do that. That's why I pant for God. I want that restored relationship with God. Why are you in despair, O my soul? Why have you become disturbed within me? Hope in God, for I shall again praise him for the help of his presence. Oh my God, my soul is in despair within me. Therefore, I remember you from the land of Jordan and the peaks of Hermon, from Mount Mizar. Deep calls to deep at the sound of your waterfalls. All your breakers and your waves have rolled over me. The Lord will command his loving kindness in the daytime, and his song will be with me in the night, a prayer to the God of my life. And I will say to God, my rock, why have you forgotten me? Why do I go mourning because of the oppression of the enemy? As the shattering of my bones, my adversaries revile me, while they say to me all day long, where is your God? Why are you in despair, O my soul? What I love about that, I like our song. I like the music part of it. I like the expression of that. But I don't think it did a great job of getting the lament coming across. That we sing this from a contented position. The psalmist was saying this from an uncontented position, this turmoil in his life. And this goes on, Psalm 90. Lord, you have been our dwelling place in generations. Before the mountains were born, you gave birth to the earth and the world. From everlasting to everlasting, you are God. You turn back unto the dust and say, return, O children of men. For 1,000 years in your sight are like yesterday when it passes, or as a watch in the night. But you have swept them away like the flood. They fall asleep, and in the morning they're like grass, which sprouts. And so he's just talking about life. And the way life is, we're going to die. Well, the Lord may come. I kind of hope that's true. I'm sorry for the young people that are not going to experience all that we got to see, but wouldn't it be nice if he came tomorrow? Wow. Wait a minute. We haven't gotten through March Madness yet. I haven't seen all the basketball games. No, which is. So here's a list of the Lamentations. And I'm going to tell you, get you a big cup of coffee or tea if you'd rather, and just start reading the list that I gave you, the number of these Lamentations. And just try to put yourself in their shoes. What would you pray? Thank you.